Hi, this is Erik Larson from LearnByBlogging.com. Today I want to give you a review of this book. I read it by ebook. The Dead Wake by Erik Larson. Erik Larson is this book author, and Dead Wake is about this cruise ship Lusitania that sailed between New York City and Britain's Liverpool back in the early 20th century, in the middle of the World War I, or even before the starting of World War I. And just right after the Titanic struck a few years earlier. And as a result, there are many safety features like lifesaver issues and lifeboats were put in place. And in the pride of the Britain to be traveling as fast at a fast speed, and so the Lusitania was the ship of the high-tech ship at that time. And at that time, unfortunately, German was in the war with Great Britain, and the German submarine at that time was just beginning to prosper, develop it at that time, and it's the U-boats. At that time it was called U-boats. It was starting to terrorize the Allies with their strategy of torpedoing most of the British ships, and whether they are military or civilian ships, they're all being torpedoed equally. So the story will develop along three major tracks. There are key people such as Captain Turner and the other memorable passengers of the ship. There are quite a few who actually kept a very nice diary or record, and the author actually went through quite a bit to dig out the details and bring in a lot of stories, personal story of the individual passengers. And so the first track was about Captain Turner, and then the other passenger, and then the second track is about the captain of the U-20 U-boat, around the development of the U-boats, and Captain Swigger is the German captain. And the third track is Room 40, which is a British secret agency in tracking and deciphering the German U-boat communication. And then there was the U.S. President Woodrow Wilson in his quest for his new love after the death of the First Lady. Okay. Everybody know the answer. The ending. Of course, in the end, Lusitania was sunk by U-20 within the same small window of opportunity. We call it luck or fate. This led to the U.S. Joining the Allies in battling Germany and brought the war to the end. Without U.S. participating in the war, it could be really ugly. Germany was in the upper hand at that time. So what struck me about the story, I'm going to go through the takeaways. I don't want to give away a lot of the personal stories. Very good reading if you want to read them, but the main takeaway is that why German military was so careless in getting to the bad side of the U.S. in the conflict. I think they way underestimate the United States. The behavior seemed to anger the rest of the world by just torpedoing all the civilian boats. Just cannot figure out the motivation and what the conflicts between Britain and Germany is all about, and there's such a deep hatred toward one another in both World War I and World War II. So, and then also is it really a conspiracy by Britain to make Lusitania to the scapegoat or the fall guy to get U.S. into the side of the war? There's some truth to it, there's some rumor to it, and I don't think I'll rule it out. I think that is, unfortunately, over 1,000 people were the sacrifice to make the war actually end a little bit faster by involving the U.S. in the war. And also, the no machines and ships are invincible. There's always some weaknesses in the design that would doom the entire ship without even with just a small injury. I think in this particular case, all it took was just one torpedo with 60% chance of actually making out of the U-boat at that time. The technology was not so mature, and the torpedo actually had a very small percentage of shooting out of the boat, and there's a very small percentage of actually hitting the target. So it's kind of it's fateful for the passengers, for the ship, and that's what the history is all about. Reading this book during the cruise ship, as you can see, I'm in a cruise ship right now. I'm in the Holland America cruise ship while reading this book, and it actually gives a different meaning to the makes the experience a little bit edgy for me. If you want to go on a cruise ship, maybe this is not a good idea to be reading this book. I was pleasantly surprised. The amenity in La Satania actually not much different from today's cruise ship, which was like Satania what happened over 100 years ago, almost 100 years ago. And except nowadays the ship engine, we don't use the coals anymore. We use diesel fuels and all that. The ticket's probably cheaper. They still have first class, second class, and third class. All depends on right nowadays it depends on the room size. You pay different price. And of course, I hope today's cruise is much safer than those days in over 100 years ago. I'll give you a panoramic shot of where I'm staying, and you can hear the background. We are in the ocean, Mediterranean sea right now, traveling toward Italy from Greece. And anyway, so the one thing I also learned about the book is that one should never take any emergency situation for granted. Always take every emergency situation seriously and follow all the necessary procedures and precaution. And that's why in the first day of the ship, first day of the cruise, we went through a drill, emergency drill. Everybody has to come down to the deck, get ready to and put on the emergency, the life jacket and all that stuff to be ready for in case there's an emergency. I think that is a lot of lessons learned from the old days, and La Satania being one example. Also, Woodrow Wilson's prudence in participating in World War I was simply very different than the U.S. would do nowadays. It took 2 years right after the La Satania incidents for them for U.S. to participate in the war. So being neutral for so long may have prolonged the war and the suffering longer than necessary, but that's how it worked. And I think Woodrow Wilson himself didn't want to involve U.S. too early, and he was having some personal issues. He was unusually lonely in the top without his wife. His wife actually passed away in the middle of his presidency. And his pursuit of a new love seems to bring out the human and vulnerable side of him, which is understandable, and especially you are in that kind of position. So, and this book also includes a lot of the story behind that. And Winston Churchill had a very active role in this book as well. I didn't know he actually was involved with both World War I and II, and maybe that what makes him such a tough person. So overall, it's a very good nonfiction book. If you like to read a novel, this actually reads like a novel, and characters are very well developed, well researched, and especially after almost a century, it can capture all this data, all the information is quite amazing for the author to do. If you're interested in the World War I conflict and the sea battles between Britain and Germany and the U.S. is involved in, you will like this book, and how another position another how the author is positioning the Lusitania incident to be a critical turning point of the war, and it kept me awake one night just reading the book. It was a little bit scary or something. I don't know what it is, but I think reading the book, being on a cruise ship and reading a cruise ship being torpedoed by U-boat put a different spin to the story. Anyway, that's all I have on the book. I'll give you a panoramic view of the cruise of my cabin, and just give you an idea what it's like to be on the cruise ship. And hope you enjoy the book, and I'll see you next time. Bye now. This is a cabin look from. This is a look from my cabin. As you can see, we are sailing toward Italy, and Naples is where we are sailing to. And there's here the ocean, and you hear the background noise. So here's another ship that's far away. I think that's another cruise ship. Anyway, that's all I have.